Thank you very much, Dan. What a pleasure it is to be here with Governor Malloy and with a number of my fellow Rhode Islanders, in addition to Senator Connors, our Director of Labor and Training and former Lieutenant Governor Charlie Fogarty is here. Ray DePasquale, our Commissioner of Higher Education and the head of our community college, is here. Lauren Adrian, the new and very energetic chairman of our Board of Governors, is here. Representative Frank Ferry, who is one of the leading voices in our state legislature on education issues, is here. And now you got me as well. So it's good to have a Rhode Island group here, and I'm very pleased to be able to join such a distinguished gathering of dedicated educators and policymakers and community leaders. It's been over 50 years that the New England Board of Higher Education has leveraged the academic bounty of our 6 states and their hundreds of educational institutions, including many of the finest colleges and universities to be found anywhere in the world, to enrich teaching and research across the nation. New England's economy and quality of life depend on the efficacy and diversity of our region's extraordinary higher education resources. Indeed, the long-term success of the United States relies on the unparalleled capacity of our educational system to foster talent and spark innovation. Today, more than ever, a college education and a degree is more important than ever to a young person's success. Throughout the immensely challenging recession that we are still enduring in Rhode Island, unemployment rates around the country for those with a college degree have only been at 4.2%. It has been those without college degrees who've suffered the brunt of the terrible unemployment statistics that we've seen around the country. And so, as many Americans struggle to find or to regain employment, they turn back to higher education to move into that college-educated cohort that is doing so much better. That degree, however, often comes with a hefty price tag and very burdensome debt. In the decades following World War II, the federal commitment to education helped the American middle class to bloom. Government grants made college and upward mobility a reality for countless Americans. In Rhode Island, this tradition is embodied by our legendary Rhode Island Senator Claiborne Pell and his Pell Grant program. Claiborne Pell envisioned a grant that would enable low-income students to attend college and share in the American dream. And for decades, Pell Grants have helped millions of people complete college and reach their dreams. One of my most meaningful events when I arrived in the Senate was to discuss with Senator Ken Salazar, now Secretary of the Interior Ken Salazar, how he came from a family 7 generations in this country, but never a college education, rarely a high school education. During his lifetime, both electricity and running water arrived on their ranch, but his whole group of siblings went to college. And they went to college because of Pell Grants, and Ken Salazar became a United States Senator, and his brother became a member of Congress. So they were a really living embodiment of what the Pell Grant can mean, not only in the lives of individuals, but in the life of our country. In 1976, the first year that Pell Grants were fully funded, they covered nearly 3/4 of the cost of attendance at a typical 4-year public college. Nowadays, a full Pell Grant covers less than 1/3 of that cost. As grant aid has fallen and tuition has soared, students have to borrow to make up the difference. According to a recent report by the Project on Student Debt, the average Rhode Island college student graduating in 2010 owes $26,340. For some colleges around the country, the average debt is double that. The total amount of debt carried by college graduates in the U.S. just passed the $1 trillion mark. And under current law, it's nearly impossible for those students to seek the kind of bankruptcy protection available to other kinds of borrowers when they're in over their heads. The report reveals that students in the Northeast, where there are more private nonprofit colleges, borrow more than those from other parts of the country, where a greater share of students attend public universities. Attention must also be paid to the growing for-profit higher education sector. Even though that sector only comprises about 10% of college enrollments, students who attend for-profit colleges account for 1/4 of all federal loans and grant spending, and for nearly half of all student loan defaults. The stifling trillion-dollar debt load this generation is bearing makes grants like the Pell Grant even more crucial. Congress has recently taken some positive steps to increase the buying power of Pell Grants. After years of level funding, a Democratic Congress and White House began to increase the maximum grant from $4,050 in academic year 06-07 to $5,550 for this coming academic year. We also increased the income level that automatically qualifies a family for the maximum Pell Grant, a change that better reflects today's economic realities. Sadly, this year has seen a renewed assault on Pell Grant funding from opponents in the House. The fiscal year 2012 budget actually passed by the House would have reduced the average award by $1,775 and cut off more than 1.3 million students, including about 5,800 students in Rhode Island alone. We all recognize the need to reduce our nation's deficit, but cutting Pell Grants in order to achieve this is short-sighted and ignores the value to our country of college education. So I introduced a resolution stating that Pell Grants should be excluded from any agreement to cut the deficit. I urge all of you, in whatever way you can, to join in the effort to preserve this needed and successful grant program. Getting an education should propel Americans up the economic ladder, not weigh them down. Students today graduate into a desperately weak economy, as we all know. With 61,000 Rhode Islanders and millions of Americans currently looking for jobs, even college graduates need an economy that can put people back to work. In response to the jobs crisis, President Obama proposed the American Jobs Act, infrastructure investments, payroll tax cuts for every single American worker, and tax breaks for businesses that hire new workers. Economists estimate that the American Jobs Act would create 1.9 million jobs, and its provisions were selected because they have received wide bipartisan support in the past. Unfortunately, that legislation has been blockaded by my colleagues on the other side of the aisle. So we have tried advancing the individual provisions of the American Jobs Act as standalone bills. The Teachers and First Responders Back to Work Act would help states keep 400,000 teachers in the classroom, cops on the beat, and firefighters at the ready. That too was filibustered. Last week we brought forward the Rebuild America Jobs Act, which would immediately invest $50 billion into our nation's crumbling infrastructure, generating hundreds of thousands of good jobs, and establishing a national infrastructure bank, which is an idea I have long supported. That effort, too, was blockaded. Sadly, this partisan gridlock has become all too common in Washington. Its low point was this summer when a small minority of lawmakers endangered the full faith and credit of the United States over the debt ceiling. Standard & Poor's downgraded our nation's credit rating for the first time in history because, in their view, this, quote, political brinksmanship, close quote, weakened, quote, the effectiveness, stability, and predictability of American policymaking and political institutions. But for all that, I do see signs of a thaw in the Senate. The bitter rigidity may be beginning to break up. Senator McCain has just publicly questioned in the Senate the wisdom of obstructing all of President Obama's nominees. A few weeks ago, our Health, Education, Labor, and Pensions Committee approved a very good education reform bill, fixing some of the policies of No Child Left Behind, under the joint leadership of the Democratic chairman and the Republican ranking member. I was able to help get some key provisions into that bill, including a measure crafted with Republican Senator Lamar Alexander of Tennessee to bring greater flexibility to the process of turning around failing schools. That bill cleared our committee on a bipartisan vote. Small signs, perhaps, but good signs. Because, as Pell Grants show, government can help open the promise of unlimited opportunity that has always been the cornerstone of the American dream. For centuries, New England colleges and universities have prepared American thinkers, innovators, engineers, and citizens for the great task of building this exceptional nation. Today, your halls cultivate the next generation of leaders who will provide American security, innovation, prosperity, and justice for the next generation. Our academic institutions are the reason New England works. The federal government must be a partner in shaping the 21st century American workforce and continuing the ideals and values that higher education has long stood for in this country. I will continue to fight for policies that strengthen our institutions and help students and working families in New England and across the United States achieve their dreams. Thank you again for your dedication to your students and to the higher pursuit of knowledge and progress in our country. Thank you so much.